For much of the day, Mulibram Mesgina was walking on air. After hearing that Israel signed a deal with the United Nations Refugee Agency that could see thousands of African asylum seekers like him sent to Western nations instead of being deported back to Africa.
Unbelievable. Excuse me, I didn't believe this.
We met Mesgina earlier this year, right after he received a notice of deportation. Israel's government considers Mesgina and thousands of other Africans illegal infiltrators here looking for work. Under pressure from Holocaust survivors, doctors, and academics, it seemed that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had a solution: to resettle 16,000 of the asylum seekers to Western nations.
It's a good agreement. I'm very glad that we achieved it.
Netanyahu said the deal will send the migrants to countries like Canada, Germany, or Italy. Netanyahu's office later clarified that the Prime Minister used those nations only as possible places for resettlement. It's not surprising, though, that Netanyahu mentioned Canada. It's become a leading destination for Eritrean asylum seekers living here in Israel. Mulibram Mesgina isn't sure if he'll be resettled, but if he has his way,
Where would I like to go? To Canada.
He already has friends there.
If I can go to Canada, for instance, I can start living. I believe that I can start living as a human being, not like what I was here.
But tonight, his future is once again uncertain. In a surprise move, Prime Minister Netanyahu suddenly put the agreement with the UN on hold. It appears word of the deal caught some in his right-wing coalition government, including his own Likud party, off guard. With criticism mounting, Netanyahu now says he'll hold consultations tomorrow, leaving the fate of thousands of asylum seekers in limbo. Derek Stoffel, CBC News, Tel Aviv.
As Derek mentioned there, Eritrean asylum seekers in Israel are brought to Canada, but mostly by private sponsors like faith-based or humanitarian organizations. There are more than 1,800 sponsorship applications being processed by the government. We spoke with one man now living in Toronto about why he was so desperate to leave Israel for Canada.
Basically, Eritrea is North Korea of Africa.
In 2009, Dawit Demoz fled Eritrea, one of the most oppressive regimes in the world. He made a harrowing journey to Israel through the Sinai Desert after paying nearly $10,000 to smugglers.
I basically started life from scratch. I had any support from the government. So yeah, this is how I start life, and I lived in that kind of life for 6.5 years.
Over that time, he lived in limbo on a temporary permit that he had to renew every 2 months. The country, he says, marginalized, maligned, and neglected African asylum seekers.
In 2015, I realized that, I was not going to have any hope, any future in Israel.
And he chose Canada, arriving in 2016 as a privately sponsored refugee.
I realized in the subway how multicultural Canada was. And everyone was happy to be themselves and to talk their language without, any feeling of embarrassment. Because that was the feeling that I had. I was embarrassed to be Eritrean in Israel because being an Eritrean was embarrassing.
He now works with other asylum seekers looking to follow his path out of Israel and hoping the UN deal goes through to provide some migrants, just like him, a new life.